You were initially skeptical of this entire premise of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment barring someone, former President Donald Trump, from ever serving again, from qualifying to run for president again. But you have changed your mind on that following the ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court. Why?
Yeah, I approach this whole issue with trepidation because it is a big deal to throw a former president off the ballot. But I was convinced very much by the original law review article written by the conservative law professors. I said, wow, this is a much stronger argument than I thought. But I still felt that courts were going to try to look for a way out and that somehow, some genius legal lawyer or law professor would come out with a response. And when I saw the Colorado case, I didn't see one. I didn't see a federal argument against what the Colorado Supreme Court did. And all the arguments that I have seen against disqualification are bogus, like the one with, my friend Ellie just mentioned. He suggests that the only way that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment could be enforced is through an act of Congress. That's just not true. There's nothing in Section 3 that says that. There's nothing that says that in the other provisions of the 14th Amendment. And if it were true, that would mean that if Congress repealed tomorrow all of the civil rights acts that were enacted from the time of the Civil War through the 60s to the present, that would mean under Section 1, which prohibits race discrimination, that would mean that the states could immediately start resegregating their schools and there would be no way to enforce it. That's just not the law. And there's nothing in the 14th Amendment that says that Section 3 is any different than Section 1 in that score. So that argument just goes out the door. All the other arguments that I've seen that have been raised, like the argument that the president is not an officer, is just, that one is silly because the Constitution refers to the presidency as an office dozens of times. So, really, the arguments are pathetically weak. And unless somebody comes up with something better, the Supreme Court's going to have a very difficult time avoiding the consequence of the plain language of the 14th Amendment.
Kelly?
I agree with original George here, where he started off. There is language on this specifically in the 14th Amendment. Everyone's talking about Section 3, which is very important. It says if an officer engages in insurrection or gives comfort to enemies of the country, he's disqualified. Great. But Section 5 is two sections ahead that says Congress shall have the power to pass legislation to enact this amendment. So has Congress done that? No, it doesn't say Congress shall have the power. Or states can if they feel
nonsense.
Like it. Says,
Ellie, that's just complete nonsense.
It's the language of Section 5. I think we have Section 5. We'll call it up. What's your response to that? Section 5 is clear. It says Congress has the power.
What you just said, it does have the power, but it does not say, what it does not say is that the amendment is not self-executing. And that's the point I was making with Section 1, Ellie. What it means is that if Section 3 says somebody who's engaged in an insurrection is not eligible if they've already taken an oath, then that's what it means. You don't need Congress to tell you to follow the Constitution, no more than you need Congress to tell you to follow the Section 1's prohibition in the 14th Amendment that says that you can't put black kids in a different school.
I'm not following that analogy
It's just not that hard.
Whatsoever.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Congress shall have the power. This self-executing point.
Congress says that provision, Ellie, you know better. You've read the provision. That provision applies to Section 1 as well. Your logic would mean that that states could engage in race discrimination tomorrow if all the civil rights statutes were gone. It's just nonsense, Ellie.
Not at all. That's not what it means. It says Congress shall have the power. You're trying to add in states.
It's nonsense, Ellie. It's not an argument. It's not a serious argument, Ellie. I'm sorry. It's not a serious argument.
You're speaking in conclusory terms. You're not addressing the actual issue. Let me make this point about the self-executing point.
Elliot, I made a complete argument that Section 3 is parallel to Section 1. That's what we do as lawyers. We don't say that a provision that's like Section 5 that says that Congress has the power. That does not mean that a provision of the Constitution is not enforceable unless Congress says so. That's nonsense. Okay. If the framers of the 14th Amendment had meant to say that, they could have said that in words of one syllable. Instead, they said in Section 3 that somebody who engages in an oath to the Constitution, to support the Constitution, then engages in insurrection, which isn't really a hard requirement for somebody to meet, not engaging in insurrection, They're barred. And it says that without regard. It doesn't say unless Congress does something in Section 5. It doesn't say that. And we, I'm a conservative. I was a member of the Federalist Society. This is how we read plain text. We don't make stuff up just because we don't like the result.
This is not textualism. This is pretzel logic. I agree with you. Let's take it as a given that Donald Trump... George, you have to let me talk at some point, George. Come on, you're filibustering.
Okay.
Let's let Ellie make his point, and then I got a question for you, George.
Let's take it as a given that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. The amendment itself is clear. You want to talk text? Section 5 is clear as can be. Congress has the power. What you're trying to do is read into it, and so do the states. Let me also make this...
You're misreading Section 5. The text says Congress has the power.
We'll put it up again.
It doesn't say that... it says Congress has the power. It doesn't say that Section 3 doesn't stand alone. It just doesn't.
George,
you're just,
you have to let me. You have to give me a second here, George.
Okay,
the self-executing point is one you keep going.
Ellie, you're just not making any sense.
Okay.